Black Friday is here, bargain pitchers in the spirit of one of the best holidays of the entire year where you get deals left and right. Let's talk about some deal pitchers that the Mets could get. I think we should preface that Sean Manaea and Luis Severino, it's not happening again. Not that they won't pitch for the Mets, but that type of performance and that type of production on that type of contract seems like it's impossible, at least with this free agent class. But we do have some guys that we want to talk about that could be cheaper options that could be a part of this Mets rotation and maybe have some value. Of course, this is James's wheelhouse, the pitching whisperer himself. I'm sure he's got a list of names. I've got some too. James, who do you want to start it off with?
I mean, let's just start off again by maybe continuing this Manaea Severino thing, because last year everyone's like, oh, we have David Stearns. We're going to do this forever now. We got 360 innings of like a 3.6 ERA for under $30 million, $27 million. And I know we like to think that now we have a good, smart front office. We have great pitching coaches. We have Hefner, we have Yeagers, we have Mendoza, we have Stearns. Like, we could do this all the time. You probably can't do this all the time. Maybe we'll get like pieces of it all the time. Maybe they'll do things similar to that all the time, but it's probably not going to walk through that door again. Just it simply isn't. But to start, I think start with a place that Mets fans probably want us to start, because Severino and Manaea have pitched themselves out of this bargain market. So I think we have to now go to the one guy we can bring back that could technically be a bargain starting pitcher. I don't think he's necessarily you or I's favorite, but I think he did a lot this year that would warrant a positive reunion, and that was Jose Quintana. Just because he ended the season so well. Like, he was a high fours guy. People were talking about DFAing him in June and July, and all of a sudden he rips off a stretch through August, September with 32 innings and 1 earned run. Gets his ERA all the way down to, I think it wound up like, 3.4 on the season or something ridiculous like that?
3.7.
3.7, even higher than I still thought it was. But 3.7 in the season is really great for the money he got. He leaned on his fastball and sinker. His command was a lot better. He's totally fine. He's probably going to be like 1 year, $10 million. I could definitely see David Stearns doing that just to have some type of cohesiveness with last year's team.
Yeah, I'd be super fine with Quintana being back, and I do think that is a good place to start because I think there is a realistic option that he does come back. I can't imagine his market's going to be unbelievably competitive. Everyone's going to be kind of at the same rate for a guy like Jose Quintana. It might just be a year's thing if the Mets were to miss on bringing him back. And the thing about Quintana is, yeah, sure, against the better teams, maybe it's not as dominant of starts. It's not, you don't feel as comfortable. But you do play a lot of teams towards the bottom of the division, and there is so much value in the fact that from July onward, Jose Quintana was basically giving you 6, sometimes even 7 innings every single time he went out on the mound and giving you the length. And that was against the Nationals, the Rockies. You sprinkle in the A's there, Oakland. Like, he was doing this against teams that weren't good by any means, but being able to get the job done is so important. And over a long season like that, having a guy like Quintana who you can rely on just to even give you some length in a game if you have a rough week, I think that's really important. And I don't think there's anything in particular with his game that makes you say, like, this is a great under-the-radar move, besides the fact that he will be cheap and give you innings.
Yeah, exactly. Cheap in innings. Jose Quintana is a guy, besides for the tumor that the Mets medical team missed before the 2023 season, he's been mostly healthy for his entire career. You can count on, like, an ERA between 3.8 and 4.4 and 150 innings. And then you're probably not getting upside on that, but like, that's the guy who like can churn on the bottom of your roster that can help you get to the playoffs. Might not necessarily help you in the playoffs. You know, last year he had some good playoff starts, some bad playoff starts once you got to the real playoff teams, the Dodgers, but he can give you a lot of positive things between April and September.
And in a world where Kodai Senga was like actually truly healthy, Jose Quintana doesn't really pitch in the playoffs that much.
True.
To begin with anyway.
And again, you hope to build a playoff contending team where Jose Quintana is not relied on to be more than a relief pitcher in the playoffs. But you got 2,000 major league innings. He's a fine pitcher.
Yeah, he's a good pitcher. A guy that I think maybe could be the closest, and it's a name that you love more than I do, but I understand why. It's just I've been hurt by this guy so many times year in and year out. Matt Boyd. He could be the guy, if anybody, that could be the closest to maybe a Manaea Severino-ish. Manaea was unbelievable, but just the idea of what those two gave us combined together. The issue with him is he just hasn't thrown more than 80 innings since 2019. The stuff's always been there for Matt Boyd. He had a really good chase and whiff rate the last 2 years. It's very much a project with this guy because there's always constant tinkering and changing and just hoping that he can throw any amount of innings at all. But I mentioned about being hurt so many times. How long did we hear when he was on the Tigers? This is Matt Boyd's year. This is Matt Boyd's year. This is Matt Boyd's year. Maybe that's the Manaea right in front of our eyes, though. I don't know.
Manaea did have the past of the big-time innings. I think a lot of guys, including Boyd on this list, are going to be more similar to Severino, where you've kind of seen it in the past, but you probably haven't seen it really in a while, and then you're hoping something big happens. But Boyd last year, an abbreviated 40-inning sample down the stretch for the Cleveland Guardians, was amazing. 8 starts, 2.7 ERA, 1.13 whip, strikeout rate got near 30%, I want to say, if I remember right. Yeah, 28%, only 8% walk rate. Like, he was really tremendously good when he got to that Guardians team. The Guardians, like some other teams we're going to talk about here, are really good with this game by game planning for pitchers, squeezing the most juice out of them possible. And the thing that they did for him that helped him a lot was he went hardcore back to his changeup. He had leaned a little too much on his slider the last few years. I think that was Tigers trying to coax more upside out of him. Sliders were the hot thing in baseball for the last few years. His changeup was always his best pitch. They were like, throw the changeup. The command was really good. The only risk with him is truly health. But if you want to take a shot, I had him ranked as my third favorite bargain pitcher on this list because I think he's someone that can actually give you legitimate upside, which is funny to say about a 33-year-old, but that's kind of the age of these guys we're going to be shopping him. But he truly has something to give in terms of effectiveness that I think guys like Quintana and some other people on this list we'll talk about might not have, because he can be, again, not frontline starter, but you could look up in June and be like, damn, that boy's got 2.70 ERA and 25% strikeout rate. This is an awesome signing. Like, he can do that.
Who was towards the top of your list? If you said we've talked about Quintana, Boyd was 3. Who do you have at 1 or 2?
All right, my number 1, this is going to be a crazy one. Bizarre.
Oh, man. Okay, I wonder if he's on my list.
Spencer Turnbull.
He's on my list. I had him at number 3.
Okay, Spencer Turnbull. First, I'll give you guys the bad. Injuries have just massacred his career. It was Tommy John. There was a shoulder. There's been just tons of ticky-tack stuff. It was a lat last year that killed most of his season when he was really, really good early on. The most innings he's ever thrown in his career is 148, and that was in 2019. And he was pretty good 2019. Remember, he had that no-hitter, and it was like, oh, maybe Spencer Turnbull can be a guy who like jumps up and be a real pitcher to like take the Tigers into their next iteration. Shocker, that did not happen. Now he's 32 years old. He's a free agent. And again, he hasn't thrown more than like 70 innings in 5 years. But he brought on a new sweeper last year with the Phillies. Phillies did a lot of cool things with pitch design in the last few years. Squeezed a lot more out of a lot of these pitchers, and it was amazing. It became his most used pitch against right-handed batters. That went down a little bit because he started the season in the rotation. And if there's any Phillies fans hate watching this, you guys know how badly you wanted Spencer Turnbull to take over Taijuan Walker's rotation spot mid-season.
This is what I wrote in my notes. I said should have been the 5th starter in Philly over Taijuan.
All year. I mean, he was tremendous, and they finally made that change, and he immediately got hurt. And I had him on a million fantasy teams. It never worked out, but that sweeper was the pitch for him. And then he also had a curveball he brought on too. Had 60% whiff rate, didn't allow one hit on the season, which was crazy. And the big thing about him, because we're worried about the health, he was questionable for the NLDS. They said he probably would have been activated for the NLCS. So while he was injured for most of the year, he's at least going through a healthy offseason. So I think with those 2 new breaking balls, he has a fastball and a sinker that are fine. They're good to mix up with each other. His fastball is 91 to 93. Like, it's okay. The changeup is still good. He's someone that could be, I'm not going to say he could be a monster, but I think he's the closest thing to finding a Manaea out there, especially because he kind of reinvented himself a lot with that new sweeper. Hitters had a 145, 220, 145 batting average, 226 slugging against it, 31% whiff rate. The pitch was really disgusting. I think there is a lot more upside on Spencer Turnbull. That's why he's my number 1 bargain pitcher on the market.
And I think we also have to keep in mind the guys that we're talking about, again, back into the rotation. If you look at the Mets projected rotation right now on Fangraphs, Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Paul Blackburn, Tyler McGill, and then it's Jose Budo / Dylan Covey / whoever we're talking about in this. Like, that's not a rotation you feel great about, but we know that the Mets could use Corbin Burns, Max Fried, Blake Snell, all those guys. These are the guys to fill in the back end to give some innings when inevitably guys do end up getting hurt, or just to figure out who's going to be the best at the end of the season. So another guy that I put on my list that I liked, because we just went over Turnbull and I had him on there. What about Alex Cobb? I know you made me hip to him a couple years ago.
Long time ago.
And he's dealt with injuries the last couple seasons, which, again, this is the really overarching theme of this episode. A lot of injury guys. A lot of guys who don't give you innings. Alex Cobb only threw 16 innings last year for Cleveland, and I think he threw like under 100 the year prior. He is an injury guy, but his ground ball rate is always insane. And we know the Mets play good infield defense, so that plays very well for us. He doesn't walk anybody, which was a huge problem for the Mets pitching staff last season, was just walks. And he limits barrels, which is part of the game. Like, you want to keep the ball out of the air. You want to keep it in the park. And for a Mets team that is going to be even better defensively going into next season, these feel like all good reasons to maybe consider looking at a guy like Alex Cobb.
Yeah, and the thing about Cobb, you mentioned the injuries. I know the last year for him was dominated by injuries, but the 2 years before, the 2 years of the Giants in 22 and 23, did 150 innings each year.
He did that many in 23.
Yes.
I thought he was lower.
150 innings. So those 2 years, he had 300 innings, and he had about a 3.75 ERA. 3.8 ERA.
Which is fantastic.
That's really good for you. Again, another guy's probably going to be 1 year, like $9 million. The thing with Cobb that's also funny is, but he had the injuries last year, it wasn't his arm, it was his hip, which is kind of funny because he's like almost 40 years old. He's 37 years old. So the hip injury is like, how old guy with the hip. And then he had blisters and he had nail issues. And the Giants were like, just get out of here. And he went to Cleveland again, was fine for them through the end of the year. Him and Boyd kind of came with that team together. Cobb pitched much less than Boyd, but stabilized them a lot at the end of the year when they really needed help to get over the line and reach the postseason. Wasn't that great in it, but you mentioned the ground balls with Cobb. The splitter is still amazing. It's always been his thing, sinker, splitter, sinker, splitter, sinker, splitter, and then he has the curve that he mixes in. But those are the only 3 pitches, so I get a little bit scared of him with such a narrow repertoire as he's getting older now, and the velocity has held, though. He's still like a 94-mile-an-hour guy last year. So maybe you can work, but I think neither of us love those sinkers against hitters on both sides of the plate. But he's never really ever done anything differently than that. Like he hasn't thrown a 4-seam fastball since like 2016.
That's crazy.
Like he hasn't really used seriously, he hasn't like used a fourth pitch like ever. So he's done this his whole career. He's been pretty good most of the time. He's probably fine, but he's someone who I'm worried about upside. But his 61% ground ball rate last year, small sample, it would have been the highest of any starting pitcher in the league.
Yeah, I mean he's a ground ball king.
Monster. And again, that's really helpful. And again, as we go through these guys, I think as you guys start to hear these names and probably throw open your mouth a little bit, that Mark and I try to champion these pitchers who
disgusting.
Yeah, most of them are going to wind up being not very good.
Well, I've got some names coming up.
I've got some weird ones too. But just another reason to emphasize the episode we did last week, if you guys missed it, finding the Mets' next ace. The fact that there's a really good chance that this is the offseason, the Mets do jump in the top of the market. Just because there's a lot of guys there that are interesting between Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, Max Fried, and Roki Sasaki, whatever happens with him. And the fact that the Mets got miracles last year, Minaya and Severino, and that carried them to the playoffs. They pitched so well that both of them are probably going to be gone now. I mean, we hope there's still a reunion with Severino with the qualifying offer because some team, I don't know who's going to give their draft pick to sign him, but this is the time where you probably have to buy a good pitcher to bridge the gap because you have maybe another year or two until we really have a lot of internal pitching that's ready to go. Would be a great time to like preserve this window with an ace at the top. And then you sign another 1 or 2 of these guys that we're talking about. But all the more reason the Mets will and should be concerned with the top of the pitching market.
Yeah, I didn't put this guy on my list, but Wade Miley will probably be a Met. It just feels like David Stearns, I feel like, loves Wade Miley. He was in Milwaukee, it seemed like every single year at the end of the season somehow. I didn't put him on my list, though, because I don't want Wade Miley, because I'd rather just give me Jose Quintana at that point. Like, I want to see him out there. I'm going to give you a disgusting name. And I'm just interested to see what you think, because looking into him, there's 2 things I like. His name's Jose Urania.
Okay.
And here's what I like about him. He throws 96.
He does.
Throwing 96, you just don't find that too often. There's not many guys who can throw 96 miles per hour on average. And he had a 50% ground ball rate, which was towards the top of the league. Those 2 things right there are interesting. Now, here's what's terrible. He's an awful pitcher.
Bad.
He walks a ton of guys. He has no breaking balls whatsoever.
None.
It is just fastball. But could that be where Jeremy Hefner is able to sprinkle some magic on him? Is there anything in Jose Urania? The also probably elephant in the room is that like he has major beef with Luis Angel Acuna's brother Ronald. Might be a family beef maybe. I don't know if that would be good.
Yeah, I think it could go back a while. I do agree with you with the fastball velocity, just having that is important. And I don't know, maybe he's a guy that can come in and learn how to throw a cutter. Like we talked about last episode, the Mets just got the Yankees assistant pitching coach, Desi Druschel. He's been very good with pitch design for guys. Urania also such a weird slider. It's like almost like his slider is a cutter. So maybe then
he's only ever been on stupid teams too, like the Marlins, the Rockies.
But also, again,
the Rangers can't do anything.
Why haven't smart teams tried?
You're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
He does feel like a candidate where like if he added a sweeper, because he has the sinker and the changeup, he has the slider that really acts more like a cutter. It's kind of like a back me up slider. It's really just a bad pitch. And he threw it 35% of the time last year. If there was any way for him to pick up a sweeper, you probably simply just have an acceptable 5th starter. So maybe that is the one that we signed for 1 year, $4 million. And it's just like, cross your fingers in spring training that you see him.
And if not,
you see him on Pitching Ninja.
My other thing was, if not, he's a reliever who throws 96.
Yeah, which sure, we could do that too. Then like a back me up slider and you throw 98 miles an hour. That's Edwin Diaz.
Yes.
Kidding. Jokes. But next pitcher on my list, someone near and dear to Mets fans. This reunion would warm my heart. Trevor Williams.
Yes, I had him. Yes.
I'm super in on Trevor Williams right now. Similar to Turnbull.
Dude, my first line, this is the dude.
This is it. He picked up a sweeper last year. Never thrown before in his career. 46% whiff rate, no hard contact against. He was throwing it 30% of the time against right-handed batters. They weren't even touching it. I definitely would not expect him to have like a 2 ERA again, but as a guy, again, for like 2 years, $16 million, stabilize the back of the rotation. We already saw Trevor Williams can do that. He was famously traded for Pete Crow Armstrong, the only two players in that deal, which was, probably not one of the Mets' proudest moments. This is a legitimate back-end starting pitcher who has just, in his 30s, just showed that he could pick up a new pitch, he can learn it quickly, he can apply it quickly, and now he can be a much more respectable pitcher at the back of your rotation.
Yeah, he would be free. I can't imagine he'd be getting paid very much. He's like so boring because he throws like 87, 88, I think was his average mile per hour on his fastball this year. But he just pitches well. Like it's now a couple years sample where he's had some good outings, some good stretches. I think of the Jazz Chisholm clip when he went on one of those like TikTok blonde basketball girls podcasts or whatever, which was the craziest collab of all time. But they were talking about like, is there someone who like owns you but isn't good? He's like, I don't know how this guy does. He throws like 86. He's terrible. He's not good, but I can't hit Trevor Williams for the life of me, and I don't understand why. All he does is throw junk, and it's effective, and I'd love to see him back in New York.
The one issue I do have with Trevor Williams is that fastball. Like I learned my lesson with Kenta Maeda the last year, and there's another Japanese pitcher that's posting this year. I think his name is Naoki Owasara, who also has an average fastball velocity below 90. It's just not a good place to live for a starting pitcher. It's like it is really scary. So that's the one thing I will say about Trevor Williams, but you can't deny the junk. That's the one thing that makes me very, very, very afraid of Trevor Williams.
Make you go like this?
Yeah, it's like because it's just the 90 miles an hour is just terrifying. But like when he started throwing the sweeper last year, he stopped throwing his fastball, and the velocity's been going down rapidly from Trevor Williams too. It was over 91 in 2022, then 2023 it was 89.5, and then last year was 88.9. So it's like, okay, this is happening quickly, but he keeps throwing junk, keeps trying to hide that fastball. I guess that like last year was the fewest fastballs he's ever thrown. So we hope it's just that can continue, and maybe there's some other kind of wrinkle he could bring out. Maybe it's a color that falls in between, but that 89 miles an hour scares the crap out of me.
I've only got two more guys on my list of people that I'm even maybe slightly interested in just because you know the name.
I've got three that I'm actually interested in. Wait, four that I'm actually interested in, and then six disgusting ones.
Okay, so give me some more that you're actually interested in then, because these I think my other two fall in the more disgusting category.
Next one, I've talked about him a lot on the show with Jeff Hoffman and making him a starting pitcher.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that counted for this because he might price himself out of the bargain starting pitchers, but you could probably get him for 3 years and like $44 million, like not that dissimilar to the first Lugo deal. You don't think so? Lugo signed last year for what? That was after 1 year of being a really good starter.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I don't know if that falls into the bargain necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that part. It's not the price part.
No, but as long as his fastball can hold up, like going from the bullpen to the rotation, I think he could be super legit. Like once upon a time, he was one of the biggest starting pitching prospects in all of baseball. I think he's from Long Island. He got drafted in the first round by the Rockies. Had to pitch in Colorado, which will never be good. Went to the Reds, picked up some new things. Still wasn't good there. Went to the Phillies last year. Splitter's amazing. If that fastball can just hold 95 miles an hour, I think you have a very clear number 3 starter with upside here. He will need to throw more splitters. He will need to throw more two-seamers, but fastball and the slider, again, super legit. He's got the New York roots. I think there's a sneaky, really nice marriage here. I think there's also sneaky, legitimate upside on this one.
Yeah, no, I don't hate it. I just feel like there's going to be some team that's going to come in and pay him, and it's the Angels, because why wouldn't it be?
They just pay Kikuchi. How much more money are they going to give out?
Dude, Artie Moreno's an idiot. He'll do anything.
I'm pulling up the Seth Lugo contract now because I remember even when it was signed last year, I was like, that's it? When he signed his deal with the Padres initially, it was 2 years, $15 million. And last year, the deal with the Royals was 3 years for $45. So if you can get Jeff Hoffman for 2 years, $18 million, which is probably more than he'd get just simply as a middle reliever with some high leverage stuff, because that's kind of like how much better of a reliever was Jeff Hoffman this year and Seth Lugo 2 years ago?
That's a good question. I don't know. Off the top of my head,
a ton.
Yeah, but
you could easily be the reliever price.
Then does Hoffman want to take less to be a starting pitcher?
But I don't think he's going to get less. I think that we're kind of evolved past the point where teams are paying like super, super, super high.
Except the Angels.
Yeah, except the Angels, I guess. But like, I don't think many teams are going to give relievers who aren't 99 mile an hour guys who are like top of the line closers anything more than a third year ever. So I think if you give him 3 at a little bit more than the reliever money, where you're not pissed off if he can't start, he has to relieve. I think there's a middle ground there where he does better market himself as a starting pitcher, but it's still less than you're going to give any other starting pitcher.
I think there's also a world where like the Phillies could also use him back again, and they're just like, we're gonna take him.
Yeah,
back.
and
they kind of can't let him go. Yeah.
I mean, because I don't think you're gonna bring back Estevez after the home run heard around the world by Francisco Lindor, but I think that Hoffman's market could heat up because of how bad this bargain pitching market that we're talking about is.
Yeah, again, you still haven't named the two disgusting guys that I have, so I can't wait to hear where these next ones are going.
So next one I have 3 more non-disgusting ones.
Roll through the non-disgusting.
Tomoyuki Sugano, NPB legend. You don't like him very much.
Don't care.
Again, famously, you didn't like Imanaga last year, so
Imanaga.
Why do I keep doing that? Imanaga. Shota.
You said it well for so long.
The whole season. Imanaga.
Who are you talking
I don't
to?
even know. I don't even know. It's just in my head. It was the first thing I ever heard, so that's how it stuck, and it's hard to undo that. But
to be fair, for different reasons, I didn't like him.
Yeah, true. But Tomoyuki Sugano, he's thrown over 1,800 innings in the NPB. Last year, he was one of the best pitchers in the league again at 34 years old. His fastball is 92 miles an hour, which is passable, but he uses a cutter a lot that makes up for a fastball that's been deteriorating a little bit. He has a splitter, he has a slider, he has a curveball, he has really good command, he has a two-seamer sinker he mixes in. I think he just is a slightly better version of what you'd be getting from Trevor Williams for probably a little bit more money. Also, I see him as a guy, he posted once before, he didn't like his contracts, he went back to the Yomiuri Giants. I can see him as a guy like Twilight, just hang out in New York for a few years. Be like, I did New York for 3 seasons, like kind of something like that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I know Japan strikes out so much less, but when I see like an 18% K rate, I'm just like, sure, the breaking balls are good, but like, how good are they? No one's swinging and missing.
But 7 strikeouts per walk. He doesn't walk anybody either.
Yes, no, the walk, but also like, I don't know, Japan plays a different game too. No one really hits home runs over there. They have like a guy or two who hits double-digit home runs on a lot of these rosters. I'm saying double digits, by the way. That's very true. So, yeah, I wouldn't be afraid to walk anybody either because they're not going to do any damage hitting the ball over the fence. And that's a super generalization of the MPB, which is a great baseball league. But
you just said the opposite, though. You should not want to walk people because no one's hitting home runs. In fact, he doesn't walk anybody and it doesn't allow any runs.
Well, my whole thing is that's exactly why. Because I'm like, just throw strikes because they're not going to do any damage. Like it doesn't matter. It just doesn't get swings and misses. But that could be the opposite. Is because he knows they're not going to do any damage. He's like, I don't care about strikeouts. Just get out.
Shota said that last year too. He's like, I'm going to go for more strikeouts now because I can. That's something that happens in the major leagues more.
Do we have any stuff numbers on like what this stuff looks like? Because we knew with Shota, like that fastball was a unicorn.
I have some stuff numbers on him, and the only pitch that's below average and stuff is the fastball. Shout out my guy Isaac for the stuff here. The cutter's plus, the slider's plus, the splitter's plus, the sinker's fine, the curveball's plus. Okay. So that's what I'm saying.
What's the contract look like?
I think the contract, you get like 3 for 40, maybe less. 2 for 19.
At that price range, like, who am I to say I give a shit?
This is what I'm telling you, that you have this hard stake in the ground thing with him where I'm like,
I've seen Shun Yamaguchi. I've seen it.
I think this is one of the best pitchers in the history of the MPB. Shun Yamaguchi was just fine. Like last year in his age 34 season, it was 111 strikeouts and 16 walks and 157 innings.
That's just, I don't know. This is just me being a fucking old man and being like, I don't trust him. Like, we pitched the MPB.
Remember those numbers we gave a few weeks ago? We did the Sasaki episode, like the fact that he was about 30% strikeout minus walk rate, and the elite guys are like in the low 20s.
Yeah,
he was about 16 strikeout minus walk rate, which isn't that far away from it. Of course, the strikeouts are lowered down. He's not allowing base runners. It's just I think he's not going to be the ace. I say he's one that came. Yeah, he's one of the best pitchers in the MPB. He's not going to come over here as anything remotely close to that, but you have a guy for very little money who's pitching a lot of, again, big games, the MPB, a lot of big crowds. Yomiuri Giants are the brand. They're everything there, and he's been with them since he was in his early 20s. Like, he's coming in with, like, the mentals to, I think, to be a real starting pitcher for the regular season.
All right, fuck it. I'll take it. Why not? All right, give me another one.
All right, next one. I mean, this is a favorite of the podcast for a long time. Frankie Montas, similar to what
is.
You were saying.
He's not bargain, though, dude.
I don't think he's going to be very expensive.
He's going to get like 18 mil.
Not a year. No way.
Dude, Lucas Giolito got 19 mil, and he was dog shit going into free agency.
Right, well, if he gets that much money, then I'll eat my words, because I think you can get him for about, again, because wasn't Benaya last year for 13 mil, 14 mil? Was that technically a bargain? Same as Severino for 12?
Okay. If you get him for 14, I'll give you a bargain.
My line is like 16 is the bargain number, because that's like if you're over 16, under 16, like that's what the bargain starting pitchers are.
Okay, all right. It's gonna be close.
Yeah, the one thing that doesn't make me feel that confident about Montas though is he went to the Brewers last year and like they changed a bunch of stuff and the results were really not much better at all. But he had way more strikeouts, that's the one thing that's going to show up in a small sample, which was like 9 starts with the Brewers. Lots of weird, teeny little tiny tweaks, some of which I know you and I won't even like, but they did them and he got more strikeouts. way more sinkers, two-seamers. I don't know what she classifies as to lefties. Ton more. It went from 8% to 20% overall, and from 7% to 34% his first pitch to lefties was that sinker two-seamer thing he throws.
Wow.
Yes. And then those replaced a lot of early count four-seam fastballs, but then they moved those four-seam fastballs to later in the count. And he started using that four-seamer as his put-away pitch, which I was like, oh, but he also throws 96 miles an hour. So, I mean, last year went down to like 94.5, 95. He still got it up to 96, 97 sometimes. Got rid of all of his sliders to lefties, which makes sense. Slightly more cutters, but a lot more cutters when he fell behind in counts. That was kind of his pitch to get himself back into at-bats. Very similar to exactly the critique that we gave Kodai Senga in his rookie season. That kind of catapulted him to the next level. And Montas, a guy who has not always been great with home runs. Milwaukee's not a great place. Same with Cincinnati last year to keep the ball in the yard. And then at the end of the day, his best pitch has always been his splitter, and he was throwing a lot more splitters, especially when he was ahead in the count with the Brewers. So Milwaukee's one of the best in the league with figuring out these tweaks, which kind of pulls me back too, because I'm like, they tried as much upside as they could have squeezed, and we saw a guy who was still like a 4.3 ERA guy with like a...
And the Reds too.
Yeah, the Reds, they're both good at that, like 26% strikeout rate, but we're going to have a better ballpark, so that could help that a little bit. The one thing for him, I hope he can rediscover some of that fastball velocity. He's had some injuries. The velocity's fallen since he was with the Yankees. I wonder if you can get that back up a little bit to over 95, 96, besides last year when it was like just between 94 and 96. I want 95 to be the floor rather than the average.
Yeah, that would definitely change the pitcher he is. I don't know. I didn't put him on my list just because he wasn't bargaining in my head. But yeah, I mean, listen, like you said, you set your number. I can get behind that. I'm going to throw out a disgusting name real quick. Mm-hmm. Patrick Sandoval. I know he can't pitch this year.
Yeah.
He's got Tommy John in June. But there is good stuff there.
Totally.
And he's had some points of like where you watch him pitch and you're like, damn, like there is a good pitcher inside of Patrick Sandoval somewhere. And he is coming from what could be the worst pitching development organization in all of baseball in the Los Angeles Angels. I mean, they take clay and they turn it into dirt. It doesn't even make any sense. Like you're like, you dried it out and it became crumbly. How did you do that? There's upside here, but the issue is that he's probably not going to pitch this year. And if he does, it's like a month or two. So it's not really going to help this current iteration of the Mets. You would be signing him on like the Brandon Woodruff 2-year deal, hoping that you get 1 year out of him, essentially.
Totally. And his fastballs are so bad. He gets nothing with them, where every single secondary pitch is good. Slider's quite good. His curveball's quite good. His changeup's amazing. Like he has all of that where it's, I don't know, like maybe again, there's just enough to fake it with a smart team and a big ballpark and good defense. Like sometimes where I'll never tell you I hate Patrick Sandoval, but it's been a very steady decline in the last few years. I think a lot of it's due to health and just the Angels' vortex of sorrow. But I don't know. Like, are you giving him, how much money are you even giving him to rehab with you for a year to buy the rights for Patrick Sandoval in 2026?
I don't know. What is it, like 2 for 20?
I even think that's high.
You think that's high? Okay,
Yeah.
but you okay? I'd give him that 2 for 20.
I think that's legitimately high. He's been so bad for years now.
I know. I just when I see all those good pitches, I'm like,
three good secondary pitches. Like that's a legitimate thing that you can't take away from him.
And seems like don't throw the fastball ever.
I mean,
like,
last year,
learn a sinker.
He only totally threw 1,400 pitches last year. It was 30% changeups, 25% sliders, then 17% sinkers, 16% four seamers, and then 10% curves and 5% sweepers. So it's just like it's junk. And that's another theme of all of these guys out here. It's a lot of hiding things. The guys with the good fastballs, they're the guys making legitimate money. Like they're not going to be on this list. But the last guy,
did you put Walker Buehler on yours?
No, I did.
I know we talked about him.
I don't think he's bargained anymore.
Yeah, me either.
I didn't put him on here. I think he'd be good, but I think that I don't know. The only thing that now makes me weird about Walker Buehler is that Dodgers didn't offer him qualifying. Why would they not offer him qualifying?
I don't know. I'm not sure. That is a bizarre.
Isn't that weird? If they know the most about him and he just pitched really well for them in the World Series and they could just attach $20 million to him for the 1 year, that makes me a little skeptical. They're probably going to make a really big offer for Soto. We're not going to talk about that now. No, not a big deal to talk about it now. My last guy who's not completely vile is Cal Quantrill.
But he's pretty close.
He's close. I said last on purpose. He's
pretty close.
I have a double line break here before I get to disgusting, and then 3 guys there before I get to putrid. But Cal Quantrill, just splitters. He threw tons of splitters last year. It was his best pitch. I think that you have to kind of take away all the results he had last year because he's pitching in Coors Field. But you could probably get close to 2022 when he was like a 3-6 guy with just a bunch of colors, bunch of curves, bunch of splitters. 2-seamers fine. Just bang, bang, bang. Spam all that stuff. Split heavy approach. Don't be afraid of it. Use your best pitches as much as you possibly can when you're not falling behind in the count. I think there's a lot of upside on Cal Quantrill in a ballpark like Citi Field that will hold the ball inside of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was simply malpractice. The Rockies got rid of him for nothing.
The fact that they didn't want to trade him and get something back at the deadline, and then got rid of him for nothing 3 months later. Legitimate malpractice. Bad organization.
Where does John Means fall anywhere for you?
I just didn't have him on. There's just too many injuries. The fastball's falling too hard.
That hurts. That hurts because I love John Means. When he had that little run with the Orioles, I was like, wow,
this guy's good.
This guy's good. He's like unimpressive, but he's good.
He was one of those weird guys with a great fastball shape, but miserable fastball velocity. I do kind of feel bad for John Means too, because I think if he would have had his heyday, I use that in big air quotes, heyday, the John Means heyday, we all remember it fondly. Team. Yeah. If he would have been able to do that after they manipulated the stadium, he would have been so much better. Because he got screwed by the righties over there in left field in Camden Yards. He got blasted out there. So it's a real shame. But there's also a guy who's throwing 50 innings in 3 years. Keeps having issues, elbow, shoulder. It's just not very good. But it's a good changeup. It's a good slider, good fastball shape, bad velocity. I don't know. Maybe one day John Means is good again, but I doubt that he's a guy in the mix this year for the Mets. Because another thing, it's hard for the Mets to take on these reclamation projects that were like, oh, sit for a year, pitch next year. Because we need to help a lot of pitching help in 2025. Tons of it. Like, if we don't sign Juan Soto, then we spam the top of the starting pitching market. Then you could take more risks on guys later on. But if we're not going to sign Corbin Burns, basically, we have to be really careful about who we get durability-wise for the season.
Run through some of the disgusting, not putrid names, because the putrid names will just be fun to rip through.
Yeah, disgusting, not putrid. Andrew Heaney, disgusting. Horrible.
Disgusting.
Horrible.
Oh, like, he'll give you a couple starts a year where he goes like 7, 12 strikeouts, no earned runs, 1 hit. And then he'll be like, oh my God, it's been a month of 2 inning starts and 8 runs every game.
He had a great stretch similarly last year through August and July and August until some September. It was like he was using his changeup for the first time in his career. It's like, oh my God, this pitch is great. The problem is he started doing that too late. His fastball's falling off a cliff. His slider looks terrible now. Like, those two things were always his bread and butter. And now those are like his 2 worst tools in the tool bag. The only reason that gives me a modicum of hope with him is last year he brought his curveball back a little bit. 2 years ago, he scrapped it. I think it was that year with the Dodgers, and it was they were just like fastball, slider, fastball, slider, fastball, slider, change up when you absolutely have to. He threw a couple of them his first year with the Rangers. Last year, he threw a bunch more. Since he trashed it and brought it back, it's come throwing it a lot slower. It's like a 75-mile-an-hour pitch now, which is one of those big loopers. But it's got a ton more drop on it. So it was kind of more of a steal strike pitch, but if he can do anything to return to anything with the fastball and the slider, like maybe stealing some strikes with the curveball and the changeup that is now league average, can make him a 5th star that doesn't make you want to throw up in your mouth.
White Jose Quintana? What is he?
Yeah, he has Jose Quintana with some flair. People used to think had upside for the last couple of years. Next one like this too, vile Michael Lorenzen. I keep going.
That's my guy. I love Michael Lorenzen.
I mean, I just like sore the vin on him. Just so much junk. He threw 7 different pitches last year. And he only became a full-time starter 2 years ago at 30 years old. So I still think he's learning how to pitch as a starter in the major leagues. Like, he has 3 different fastballs, which the Mets love. The 4-seamer, the 2-seamer, and the cutter. Can definitely see him being a big cutter guy. Seems like that's something that the Mets are prioritizing with some of these weird fringe relievers they're signing this offseason as well. And again, just 7 pitches. Like, you can do a lot worse than 7 different pitches for $8 million in 1 year. You can do a lot worse than that.
And he could swing it if we ever need it. The guy's an elite hitter.
And he could get corner outfield if we really, really need that too. Like, it may be a little weapon there, but no, it's probably never going to happen. Just $8 million, like, you could do a lot worse. Here's a way you could do worse for $8 million. Oh, Did you not like that? You're going to like this less. Griffin Canning. Terrible. Horrible. Can't stay healthy. Fastball stinks. But slider's really good still. And he's pitching the Angels.
Yeah, there it is. I was going to say, where'd he come from, James?
There's probably something you could drag out of him right now. It's funny that the Braves traded him for Jorge Soler, gave the Angels that whole contract, and then just cut Griffin Canning.
Just shows you how stupid that organization is. And the Angels, that they thought that they were getting rid of Griffin Canning for Jorge Soler, and they're like, oh, what a deal. We just got an all-star caliber hitting DH for a pitcher that stinks. And the Braves are like, yeah, we never wanted him. We just wanted you to take the money. Yeah,
and thank you for taking the 3-year commitment off our hands, because we're kind of a secretly broke team. But Griffin Canning is my last of the and then next we got putrid.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some of the names that you put on putrid in the Google Doc,
Disgusting.
And these were guys that I looked at, and I said, I can't put them on the list. They're putrid. They're terrible. Putrid.
Well, that's why I got to do it.
There's reasons behind some of them. Like, I see Luis Patino on here, and I'm with you too. I'll never give up on him. I can't give up on him.
I can't quit that.
He's so electric as a prospect.
No, probably though he just winds up being more of a reliever, which will be the theme of these putrid names. But there's probably just still like some kind of liveness here with a fastball and a slider. He's picked up a 2-seamer the last few years because the 4-seamer just wasn't that dominant in the majors as it could have been, but there might be something here. It's like the same reason Tuki Toussaint kept getting his chances. Like, I can't quit Luis Coutinho until that coffin is closed. I will
Is
not.
Tuki Toussaint available?
Probably. Whose team would he be on? I mean, maybe give him
White
a shot.
Sox.
Put him in AAA. Next one similar, Huascar Ynoa. 2022. Those 2 months of 2022, man. I'll never forget that. Incredible. 97 with a 6 slider. He did get smacked around last year in AAA. The Braves cut him, but still was a really good slider. Again, probably more of a reliever. And the last
he's also
one,
on the IL still, technically.
Jeez, yeah. Last one, another guy who got Tommy John June, still on the IR. Mentioned him last episode. He's a guy I bring in for like $1 million to let him rehab, just to see what we got here. Ray Kerr, baby. I love Ray Kerr. Sits 95 from the left side with a really good curveball. Shows a cutter and a splitter. All of them are plus. I think that he actually is someone that you will hear Ray Kerr's name in the major leagues again. Mark my words. I don't know if it'll be with the Mets, but you will hear this name in the next 3 years.
And we know that if the Mets sign Ray Kerr, David Stearns, or someone close to David Stearns' ear is listening, because no one in their fucking right mind is bringing up Ray Kerr on any sort of podcast right now.
But I will not quit Ray Kerr.
That's why we're sick in the head. We get all these views on these Juan Soto episodes. We're like, how about bargain pitchers? How about we talk about guys that nobody gives a fuck about besides us?
And you know what? That's what you guys are listening to, because you should give a fuck about these guys. Because, I mean, even last year, like, we were a little bit off about Sherman and I. Neither of us really liked that signing, but we're like, at least there's some upside on it. We both love Severino. Both hated Jose Quintana, but we also, tumor notwithstanding. There's this front office seems to have a knack of finding guys for no money who are a little bit better than the rest of the market thinks.
Yeah.
While you're probably not getting 2 studs again, you will find someone maybe from this list or some other list that's going to contribute in a big way to the Mets next season. That's really important.
Yeah, and just to kind of put a bow on this thing, I think the Mets are also going to be really active on the trade market as well. That seems to be where if you are looking for like the ace market is great on the trade market too, but if you're looking for some guys to be fillers, to be back end guys, the trade market's a great place this offseason. There are the Rays, the Rockies, even like there's a lot of teams that are willing to just give up anybody right now, I think, in terms of starting pitching.
Yeah, I mentioned Jeffrey Springs on the trade episode recently. I think he'll be someone who's available to the Mets.
Austin Gomber.
I mean, just give him one more shot. I'm trying to trades, guys. I mean,
Zach Littell will be available. So
many of these teams are like too close to competing right now. I'm like, are you going to trade guys? I don't really know if you're going to trade guys. You know what I mean?
Rob Manfred's MLB. Everybody's a playoff team.
That's what I'm saying. He soiled the game that we love. Like, we're not trading for Tristan McKenzie. Like, even though the Guardians are going to trade everyone else on their roster that makes over $1 million. It's just, the trade market, it just happens randomly. It's very hard to predict the MLB trade market.
Yeah, and whenever something happens, we'll let you know. If there's a rumor, we'll let you know. That's what we do over here. Thank you guys for listening and watching this episode of the Mets'd Up Podcast. Make sure you follow all our social media at Mets'd Up on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Subscribe to the Mets'd Up Podcast YouTube channel if you're watching over there, or if you're listening, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Overcast. Drop us a rating, drop us a review, download, and subscribe. You can follow James on Twitter at
James_Shiano.
I'm Giraffe Nick Mark with a C. Thank you guys for listening and watching. We will catch you after this weekend for another episode. Peace out.
See you guys next time.